This computer. Everybody, welcome to the Wealth Through Health podcast. Zach Deane here with special guest Joel Brown. Thank you so much for your time, brother. Thanks for jumping on.
Thanks a million for having me, man. You know, it's always a yes with you, bro. We've had so many amazing conversations, and man, we were hanging out in India together quite a few years back, and had some pretty wild experiences. So yeah, man, I love your vibe, and I see what you're doing with your movement and your community, and I'm all for it, bro. So thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Yeah, well, thank you, man. Yeah, that was what I wanted to share. Like back in India, driving on the tuk-tuks, going up to different mountains, like with Mary and Jacob, our mutual friend, and going to their wedding. That was an epic week. And what I really admired about you, dude, is that obviously getting to know you, you're so humble, and you have the resume that people would dream of. You know, founder of addictedtosuccess.com. You've rubbed shoulders with people like Tony Robbins, Bob Proctor, Deane Martini, Lisa Nichols, Gary Vee, Matthew McConaughey. Like, who haven't you rubbed shoulders with, right? And it's so cool to know that you're out there giving people time and energy and connecting. You know, you've had 3 million views on your website. You're featured in the Think and Grow Rich series as well. You're a master coach and speaker, 12 years now, which is crazy. Time flies. And you've got a new website, influentialcoach.com, and another podcast called The Unknown God. And so I'm excited for this, dude, to dive deep and talk about, for anyone out there who's a business owner, entrepreneur, startup, or leader, you're going to get a lot of value out of this. And I also want to talk about the spiritual war that's going on, and your story in that, and how people can start to prepare for what's happening, maybe clear some misconceptions. So I guess to start off with, dude, what's new and what's exciting with you?
Oh man, there's so many amazing things happening that I can definitely be grateful for. And you know, as you know, we're in a chapter in history where things are definitely going through a shift, and I like to play in both. It's like, you know, be in creation, build the business. You know, I got my podcast popping. The things you mentioned, yeah, we've got Addicted to Success running. Kind of sad the fact that we can't be holding events around the world. I used to just love being able to fly around and
The best.
Run workshops and retreats. You know how it is, man. But yeah, I'm out here in Bali, Indonesia, you know, set up my life here. Life is what you make it. I absolutely believe that. You know, when you map it out, I committed to a 10-year vision 12 and a half years ago. I achieved my 10-year vision within 6 years, built Addicted to Success. We reached over 326 million website views so far. Been able to just really just connect with so many amazing people. And I love hearing people's stories. And I love to hear what the human spirit can really endure. You know, there's so much that we can endure in our life. And after a while, when you hear excuses, I just don't believe them anymore. I'm like, I can't believe it. When I've seen people come from the bottom of the bottom, and to see what they've done with their life, and to see the impact people have made, the healing that's taken place, people have worked through traumas that you think people would never be able to work through. I've seen healings and miracles. I've, you know, witnessed people that have been at the top that have come down to the bottom and being so humbled. I've experienced these things in my life, man. Gone through my own woes and challenges and overcome them. And this is part of the human experience, is to live it fully, you know, and some people quietly just mosey on by and slowly go to the grave and are in massive regret, you know. So I just don't want to be that person. And I love connecting with people, man. We're building out our influential coach program. So a certification program for coaches to learn how to be an actual legit coach that gets results, not, you know, like a status, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. I'm a coach, slap the title on there type of coach, but a coach is ready for mastery. So that's been fun, man. We attract a lot of awesome people that want to come into it. And I love raising up leaders. You know, you're a leader too in what you're doing. And if you're watching this right now, I believe all of us truly have capabilities and potential to be a leader. Unfortunately, when you look at history and particularly when you look at the way that the Greek system was run, they brought in a philosophy of the fact that they kind of like created a casting system for leaders. It was like, you have to be light colored skin, you have to have a pointy nose, a big forehead, you've got to have this certain build and that in order to be a leader. And for whatever reason, it's been brought and brought into even society today. So much of Greek philosophy has been brought into our democratic system and brought into our schools, and it starts to warp things. And then we don't know, like when you look at it from a spiritual perspective, so much of Greek philosophy has been brought into how we even read scriptures. You know, I'm a Christian. I believe in the way of Christ. So I like to dissect things that are going on in the world and really look at it and go, like, what would the other side of the coin look like? Like, let's investigate and reason. And here we are today. I mean, I try not to put myself in too much trouble, but, you know, sometimes I get ridiculed. Sometimes I flare some people up and some people get triggered. I like getting out there and just going, like, how real can we be with each other? Let's do it. The world needs it, man. It's sick of all the fake. Like, let's go. Let's be real.
100%. 100%. I think that's a really important topic, is leadership. And what you mentioned in another podcast recently with Jamie McIntyre, you were talking about, you don't care how truth reveals itself, that your compass is going towards truth at whatever costs. I'd love you to start on that, because I think that really paints a picture of what you're doing and what you're about.
Yeah, man. I think it's easy to say something is truth, right? And I think a lot of people mix it up. I think truth is exclusive. I believe that. I believe truth is exclusive. I've come to know truth in Christ. And a lot of people may feel resistant towards that because maybe they had church hurt and a religious experience. I separate the two. I don't believe in religion. I believe in relationship with Christ. And I think that a lot of time what I see, because I'm in the self-development space, right? I've been coaching, and often I hear people say, it's my truth. My truth is, and I challenge them. I'm like, let's define this. Let's break it down, because truth is exclusive and we can see it. There's truths in the universe. We can see it. It's like, there's a truth that if you tie a bag over your head, you're going to starve yourself of oxygen, right? If you jump off a cliff, no one has ever been able to defy the laws of gravity in that situation. Gravity wins, right? So there are grounded truths in reality. And I think often people will say my truth, but it's actually a belief. And to take it a step further, I love challenging beliefs, because I think so many of us just adopt beliefs. We look at society. I think often what happens is, ultimately as humans, we want to, there's three things. First thing is, we want to be able to know how to emotionally regulate. We want to be able to have reference points, especially as like a child when we're first born. We want a human there to teach us how to do life, or caregivers there to teach us how to do life. And a lot of people don't have that right from the start. So they're already going through their struggles. So they're like, well, if I don't know how to emotionally regulate myself, my response is going to be anxious in life towards relationships in life, or I'm going to be dismissive and I just need to self-preserve. I need to look after myself and screw everybody else. And they have this like emotional, unavailable, cold kind of approach to life. And I see it, man. I see it right from the start with a lot of these people I coach. I find I'm like, yo, let's go into childhood. Let's see what's here. So we've got the first one, which is being able to emotionally regulate and have that reference point of a healthy understanding of what it means to be in a relationship. Then the second one is authenticity. So many of us, through our experiences in childhood, whether it's intended or not from our caregivers, we tend to take things personally and go, oh, if mom acts like this or dad says that, it means I'm not good enough. So we carry it throughout our life. And then everything that represents feminine, masculine, that energy or associated or avatar to mother or father, we start finding it in business, in friendships, in money, right? So many people I do healing work around with the masculine. Money is the thing where they're either trying to overextend for all the money is a lack, or they don't even get it because they're so in a denial of that connecting with that thing that they associate to their relationship with their father. It sounds crazy for some people, like, what? How does it even make sense? But it's the associations we have that determines the responses we put out there in life. So a lot of people are very unhealed, man. And I think that when I look at the scriptures, I look at Christ. He came to do one major thing. He did many things. He did one major thing. He came to bring the remedy. We are an infected world. We're an infected world with selfishness and greed. It's the reason why the fabric of reality was torn in the first place. It had entered this world. And so Christ came as the remedy. And I look to someone like him and see, like, man, these standards that we're held to, they're not there to keep us in shame and guilt. They're there because our original designer, who God has created us to be, has so much potential and there's so much we can do. It's like if you created your product, you want it to do the best it can, right? If it had like some struggles or it was malfunctioning or whatever, like you'd want it to be able to be in the best it can. So I see that as like that spiritual connection, to come into that and connect with that. To me, that's truth. So much of it is truth of like, I've looked at so many other things, man. I've studied a lot of different concepts. I studied theology and went deep into, many different systems. A lot of them end with the word ism, communism, socialism, Buddhism, Taoism, deism, humanism, like all these isms, right? And so I look at it, and there we could pull it apart and go, there's nice, good things in this and that, and many different things, and patch it together. But I'm looking for like, what's the path, right? What's the path in life that shows us how to escape this matrix in a centered approach? And the only person I can ever see that's ever been able to escape the matrix is Christ, is Jesus. It's like he showed us the way to escape the matrix of the fallen dark kingdom. And he says, I am the way, right? So for me, I look at that in everything I do. It's like, how would I show up in my business if that was it? How do I show up when I hear that there's times of uncertainty and things, we're going in and out of lockdowns right now? Where's our grounding in that? Like, what do I focus on? What's the problem? What's the solution? Right? You're doing it too, Zach. You're like, I'm moving to a different spot. We're making things happen, right? Connecting with people, building a network. It's great, man. You're looking at the solution. And I think a lot of what we can fall into is we feel like we're not strong enough to be leaders. We're not good enough. We can't be our authentic self, because when we do speak out, we get ridiculed. And I'm here to say, you're wrong. You can do all those things and more. But it's knowing that your life has meaning, right? You're not just dancing with your DNA. You were brought into this world for a reason. There's value on your heart. It's placed there, and your life has meaning. And there's truth behind that, and I just see so many people that are walking in that brokenness, bro. So for me, it's like, let's work with the beliefs. Let's work around that. Like, what did you believe? Is it true? Is it a hallucination? Is this serving you? Right? Like, where can we forgive? Where can we heal? Where can we move through this to start showing up in a way where our life is more harmonized, rather than living in shame and guilt and anger and fear and sadness? That's destruction.
Yeah, truth. What a fascinating concept and a pursuit, man. That's awesome. And so what I'm really curious to know is, how do you, you're in lockdown in Bali right now. You were traveling around constantly before, Bali and before this craziness. Like, how do you, as an entrepreneur, as someone who's living your vision, who's got your vision and really standing up for that, how do you lean into challenge? How do you lean into, perceived chaos that's going on around you? Do you have a certain formula or a method?
Maybe my way's a little bit left of field, orthodox, I guess. The thing is, I have people to reach out to me like, man, I respect you because you're speaking up. You're speaking up about the hogwash that's out there. Like, let's be real, guys. You might not agree with me. Maybe you do. But there's something about what's going on that doesn't feel right. I believe there's a war on reality right now, okay? And it doesn't need to be a physical war that's seen in the physical. There's an invisible enemy that's at play, right? If we have an invisible enemy, it's just the same thing with terrorism, and you could say I'm a conspiracy theorist. I don't care, whatever, all right? When we had the invisible enemy of terrorism, how do you measure that? We don't know what's really happening. Who are those terrorists? Why are they sending, these troops over here? And why are people dying that are innocent? What's going on here? All I know is America, for the longest time, had wanted to put a Federal Reserve Bank in Afghanistan, and they finally did it after that. They were able to come into the country. The only other two countries in the world that don't have a Federal Reserve Bank is Iran and North Korea. Isn't that interesting? You know what I mean? So like, that's what I'm saying. Like, I look at both sides of the coin and go, well, it's easy to paint someone as an enemy because then the world turns on it, right? We saw that happen. We see it happen in political campaigns. Let's make this person the enemy so the world turns on it and we can get this person out. We can make this person look like a savior or a legend, and we'll get this person in. Even if we have to rig the system to make it happen, right? People know it. People are sitting around going like, oh, what can I do about it? I'm just a little person that's not a leader, that doesn't feel good enough. That's why I love working with people, so they can realize they are and they can do something, right? And so I look at this, man, and I think to myself, a lot of what's happened in history, and I think people are very poor in their history. I studied a lot of history when I was studying theology. And like, all you have to do is flick the book open, man, and see what happens. Like, I don't necessarily agree with guns. And we're going into some things here today. Is like, I don't necessarily agree with guns, as in everyone should hold it and be gun happy. It is interesting when you look at what happened in China when they took 20 million, they took guns off people, and next thing 20 million something people had been exterminated. When you look in Cambodia, 1953, they take the guns off the people, and then the top most credible people in higher positions that were a threat to the upper elite class, that were more middle class, but like scientists and people with noble credentials, were exterminated. You know, it's like, do you trust your government after that? What happens when there's a vacuum that's created before World War II, after World War One? They needed a savior. There's a vacuum there. Germany's struggling. Oh, so who steps up? A guy comes in with what was seen as good intentions, but starts to turn it and twist it, wants to eradicate Jews, turns into a Holocaust, right? You guys may think it's serious or intense, but history repeats itself. It just comes in slightly different forms. And it's not to put the fear, it's to put the blinkers on and actually start opening your eyes and going, what's possible in this world, good and bad? Because we live in a world of good and evil. I think that was the great thing, that when I was a young kid, I'd picked up a Bible and I literally read the first book in the Bible, and I go, we live in a world where there's good and evil. And I shut the book, and I didn't properly read the Bible for the longest time in my life. But I knew that we lived in a world of good and evil. So then when I experienced bullying in high school, and I experienced drugs and alcohol, and I experienced heartbreak, and I experienced people trying to blackmail me, and I experienced, things happening, people coming at me in my business for no reason but to just try and take. It wasn't a shock to me. I wasn't crippled. It was like, well, this is what it is. It brought me into realism. And I think a lot of people are walking around with their head up there behind, thinking that it will never come close to their doorstep until it does. And the question is, but is that too late? Right? And so I shared this the other day. I said, ignorance is freedom's kiss of death. You can bury your head in the sand for so long, but don't be complaining when it comes to your doorstep. And I think a lot of people right now are choosing ignorance, and they're telling themselves they're too small, and they're telling themselves, oh, it's not worth me speaking up because my business. It's like, well, you didn't build your business properly. If you're worried about Instagram putting a block on your thing for 10 days, was your business actually really stable anyway? Go build a Telegram, build a Discord group, get a text service where you can get people subscribing to your text, build an email list, run some masterclasses, bring some value in, write a book, right? Like, build a network, get a Facebook group, like just do things as well where you're not dependent on the system. And the problem is everyone got too comfortable for too long. Everyone became too reliant on social media and technological structures to the point where now they'll bleed. If they're relying on it over the next year or two, you're going to bleed. I'm here to tell you, things are going to start shifting. You got to wake up. I've read the scriptures, all right? And I've seen the prophecies, and over 2,600 prophecies are already being fulfilled in the Bible. That's 88% or something of prophecies are already fulfilled. That's like, you can't even make this stuff up. Like, you want to talk truth? That's truth. Like, that's the way God communicates with us, is to show us through prophecy. And someone asked me the other day, because we're doing a series on Revelations. People hear what Revelations is if they're not a believer, but they're like, it kind of sounds like, it's an end times, Armageddon, apocalypse. Someone asked me, what's in the book of Revelations? And I said, man, I'll tell you what, if I could summarize the book in 2 words, it's Jesus wins. But it's a bumpy road on the way to that championship, So just, keep your eyes and ears peeled. I do believe the stages are being set for that next, because in the Bible it says, in the scriptures, it says that in the last days we won't be able to buy and sell. Those will be persecuted that are believing in him and walking in that truth. And so, you know, for the longest time growing up, man, probably like you too, it's like, oh, how would that ever happen in our lifetime? However, they're bringing out central digital currencies. These banks are setting it up right now while this is going on, while you're distracted. And it means they can literally turn on and turn off whenever they want your money supply in digital currency. Okay. Yes, there's things we can do. We can get privacy coins, Monero, Pirate Chain. We can jump on. And I'm not a financial advisor by any means, but there's ways we can come off the grid. There's ways we can be decentralized. I think the worst thing to happen to the world, and some people that are very much in the probably more of an atheistic mindset that are very much about like, we've got to save the world. Like, screw humanity. Like, people could die. That's okay. But we just need to save the planet. It's like, I'm like, that's the wrong mindset. Christ taught us to look after each other. That's humanity first. The world's disposable, you know, like he created it. He can create another one again. Right. And we have a responsibility to look after the world. That's for sure. But ultimately, when we look at this, I say to people, like, you got to get clear on the fact that if you bring good and evil people together and a centralized system, and evil has more power and control, we don't live in a fair environment anymore, because it's no longer in any sense a level playing field for us. Maybe in tyranny, level playing field where we're all in shackles and lost our freedom, but who wants that? Like, let's be real. They keep trying to bring communism in. That never worked, man. There's like so many examples in history of that not working. I don't even know why it's even brought up. If they change the names, like socialism, Marxism, I know they're slightly different. I get that. But I'm looking at it just like, why you guys keep trying to beat a dead horse? It's like, it's getting ridiculous. But we want to make sure that we're independent. Like, entrepreneurs like to carve their own path. That's why I think a lot of entrepreneurs aren't falling for this crap. People that are into their spirituality and the connection relationship with God, they're not falling for this stuff like a lot of other people are, because they're like, no, I've been an independent free thinker. I'm not going to just let you take my rights that I work hard for to be able to develop my own path. Are you seeing this too, man? Are you noticing it?
Absolutely. This is, yeah, you're speaking to the choir. Like, this is something that I've known when I was 18. I remember listening to Alex Jones and watching Zeitgeist, and I got so passionate back then. This is many, many years ago. And I would burn Zeitgeist and all these documentaries and hand it out at my high school. I know it's a lot of misinformation now, but
Yeah.
I was like, guys, we've got to wake up. And that's why 3 years ago, we decided to come to Tassie to get out of the cities and to prepare in some way, shape or form. And that's, what do they say? Insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. And as you said, a free thinker, tapping into our free thinking, visionary, full potential, full expression, we will win it, and we can win. And aligning to Jesus, from my understanding, from my short time on this planet, not reading the full Bible, but really seeing the darkness that's portrayed, that's been portrayed on me and the world in movies and Hollywood and music. It got to a point where I was like, what is the other side of this? Like, you can't have one without the other. And so I think my open-mindedness, curiosity, yes, being like a solutionist as well as an entrepreneur, it's like, what do you mean? Like, I don't want, I believe that Tony Robbins is like, who you spend time with is who you become. So it's like, if I keep going down that path, listening to that music and going after those goals, I was like, it's not a very fulfilling path. And when I kind of started to study Jesus Christ and see that I could just be myself, ask for forgiveness, it was a non-conditional, I guess, contract. I could have a relationship without going to church. I was like, oh, of course, church wasn't designed for truth. It was designed for maybe the money, and maybe some churches are great, but churches are there to, as the data, as the private, the privacy of humans to do confession. They're tapping into our data now through social media, but back then the data collection was through confession. I'm like, wow, what an interesting concept.
Right,
and so
right.
that's strengthened my belief. But you unpack so many things there. My question to you is, you are sharing this alternative narrative, whether you're called a conspiracy theorist or not. You are someone who's a massive vision. But why don't you think some of these other people in high levels of influence aren't sharing the narrative? Are they worried about their brand? Are they worried about their business?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely, man. Absolutely. But here's the thing, right? Like, whether you're pro this or anti that, there's something funky going on. And some people are, I don't understand. Like, I really don't understand how, like, I've had people say to me, like, we just got to take the vax and then we'll go back to normal. I'm like, who told you that? The dudes that are in charge of all this have told you we will not go back to normal. They've actually said those words. We're not going back to normal. And for whatever reason, somewhere, maybe it's like intentional mixed messaging, like on, off, wear the mask, don't wear the mask. It's going to be the same. Like, maybe it's just like people are just, it's intentionally made to confuse people so people don't know, and they get lost in like arguing with each other. And I think that's what's happening, is they're creating division on purpose. So we're distracted to not see what's going on. But I like, nothing in me feels that this is coming back to normal. Like, I just like, pick up a history book, dude. You know, like, do your research and see what happens when empires shift. Empires come and go, bro. The kingdom of God is eternal. You know what I mean? It's like, politics aren't the answer. Left wing, right wing, none of them are fully right. You know, they both have their problems and they're squabbling between each other, and it sucks. You know, even conspiracy theories. The greatest conspiracy theorist was Lucifer in heaven. He went around spreading conspiracies. He's the first one we know to conspire, and he was kicked out of the kingdom of God because he tried to introduce a selfish government, and God said, this will not work here. And he brought it to this earth, and now we're experiencing a selfish government. No matter how much we try and create empires, they crumble. We can't do it. We can't do it without him. And you look at it, man, we've tried humanism. Like, look at the Egyptians, humanism. They became their own gods, and the pharaohs and the sons and all this stuff. We worship that, you know, and then that didn't work. You know, they crumbled. And then we have Babylon, and they worship statues and idols, and they made the king, you know, Nebuchadnezzar into an idol, when they threw people in pits that didn't believe in it and tried to feed them to lions. And then Babylon was destroyed because they became so hedonistic. Then we look at Rome, actually Medo-Persia reached the end of so much of its conquering, and Alexander the Great freaking drunk himself to death and died, you know, in a river or wherever it was that he did. And then you have Rome, and Rome, no one actually came and fully destroyed and dismantled Rome. Rome disintegrated from the inside out because of immorality. They destroyed themselves. And I worry when I look at America, because they're considered probably one of the top merchants of the world and whatever is going on. And we look at it, and they're about to go the same path as Rome. It looks like Rome is burning, you know, like they're so close to it. If they're not, they could be very close and could pull back. It's in God's timing. We don't fully know, but I'm looking at it going, this is not good. And meanwhile, you've got other, you know, countries that are coming in, that are shifting the way that they show up, and they're becoming stronger, and they're becoming more. What you don't want is a bunch of feminine men, the representatives of strength. It's not going to work. We're not designed for that. We're actually meant, when you look at the feminine and masculine energies, and I don't say just men and women, but the energies, is that we tend to be more naturally leaning into the protector, the provider, the discipline, the structure. Like, there's a saying, it's like, you know, like the strong men like create good times, right? And it only comes from hard times that they become strong men. Like, you know, good times create weak men, and then weak men create hard times. That's what we're in now. We're a bunch of weak men. There's so many snowflakes out there that don't have a backbone. The fact that this stuff's going down in Australia just disgusts me, that it can even fly. I'm proud of the fact that Aussies haven't gone and putting the poison in their arm as much as everybody else, but they're trying to coerce and strong arm people by intimidating them through the military, which they still have no right. It doesn't matter if it's a military or not. The Privacy Act covers you. You're not, it's not allowed. The federal government has these laws in place because of stuff like this. So these things are rules. Rules can be broken. Laws can't. Rules can be manipulated. When we talk about from a biblical perspective, Lucifer likes to twist and use imperial law to get his way. And it's happening. This is what's happening. We have that dark influence that's, you know, in this world, which is amplified. And we're seeing it with the child sex slaves, the sex trafficking. We see the racial division. We're seeing, you know, like presidents being assassinated. We're seeing people that are speaking up canceled. Apparently they had suicide by strangled from behind is one of the words that you hear, like suicide. It's like, that guy did not suicide himself. He actually was,
Come
he was
on.
awesome. So we've got all this crazy stuff, man,
Yeah.
you know, and it's like, it's not that some of these things weren't going on before, it's amplified more. And I think that in times like this, we have an opportunity to go, where do I stand now? When it comes to me, my soul, who am I giving it to? You know, who, like at the end of the day, you can destroy your body, but they can't take your soul, you know? And I believe, because we hear like, you know, hell, right? Hell and heaven. For me, I believe to be in the presence of God would be to be in heaven, right? And if God is unconditional love, the opposite of unconditional love, all I could imagine would be like hell, the way that hell is described. For me to stand one day before God, and he does nothing but just stands before me in all his righteousness, the glory of who he is, just who he is, that my body can't take it because the infection of the darkness that's in this world that I haven't reconciled or even brought for forgiveness, that would make me drop to my knees with weeping and gnashing of teeth, which is how the Bible scriptures explains it. It's not to say that he's doing that to you. It's just his presence is there at the time where this has to eventually end, that you're choosing whether you want to go with him or not. It's a choice. He doesn't force. The enemy of our soul forces and uses coercion and wants us in shame and guilt and anger and apathy and fear. God created us to be in acceptance, love, joy, peace, creation, power. That's what we're beautifully and wonderfully made for. And what's happening right now, people are getting sucked into the lower brackets, guilty when they're feeling shame, feeling like they're not enough. That's why I do this healing work. I love working with people because I know how much it's changed my life. And it opened me up to wanting to go deeper in spiritual transcendence, which is deeper than self-development, to walk the path with Christ. You think this world's all sunshine and rainbows? This world crucified, which is the most excruciating, that's where the word excruciating, crucified comes from the word excruciating, death of one of the men that walked this earth in perfection, that loved and healed people. And this world did that to him. So if you think it's all sunshine and rainbows, wake up. That's why I speak up, man. That's
so
why I
well
speak
put.
up.
I love that.
Because I think there's too many people hiding in their tents. You know, it's like, it's time. It's go time. All these people that call themselves leaders, man, they're not showing up like leaders. It's like, what are you doing? Oh, you like the status of I'm a leader of this, or I'm a master, blah, blah. It's like, cool, show us. Don't just say it. Show us through your being. You know, like this COVID thing revealed a lot, bro. When it started kicking off, I said it on one of I said to my group, I was like, this is going to be telling times, because the people that have been telling you about like mind over matter, mindset, and they're not showing up anymore, or they keep posting what's popular because they just want likes, but they're not actually speaking up about true, legit things because they're so scared that they'll be ridiculed. They haven't worked through their stuff. None of us are fully there. I'm not saying I'm not perfect by any means, you know, but like, it's easier to say things than to actually do it. I'm holding people to a higher standard now because things are getting real.
Yeah, if we speak out, there are consequences, but if we don't speak out, there's even bigger consequences. And I'd like to know, like, you know, from my experience, the first time, I guess, Jesus really came through me is I actually had this experience where my friend had an exorcism and I was there literally in his presence. And before that moment, I wasn't even aware that there was potential like possession from, say, Lucifer or the devil, all these terms that we kind of put it, or the Prince of Darkness, you know. And for a lot of people listening, you're probably like, what the hell are you talking about, Zach? But this had as a real experience. And my friend used biblical passages and scripture. And within that moment, my friend went from having like literally like this demon was coming through him. He was speaking in these weird sounds. He was hitting his face. Like my friend said, you know, I bind you in the cord of Ecclesiastes. And my friend literally, his hands went from hitting himself, grabbed here, his legs connected and his mouth shut up and he fell over. Like we didn't touch him. And that was the first moment where he was on the floor and he was like, I was like, what the hell is going on right now? But that was a real experience for me. And a few nights later, it happened again. And I was like, wow, it made me question everything. And so a lot of people haven't had that experience. Maybe, you know, these metaphors of seeing, you know, certain governments or these certain corruptions happening, it's more of like an experience or something we see online, but when we see it in person, it really made an impact for me. Have you had experiences similar to that? And what has helped you strengthen your belief and conviction?
Oh man, yes, like it's very similar to you, you know. And I wasn't actively going around looking for it. As a matter of fact, I thought it was so far out there. Like I thought it just happened in biblical times. It was just like it happened back then, and there were examples that could be used. But you know, I had an experience, man. I was in Mexico in Tulum, and I remember I was on a trip with a group of my friends. It was a bachelor and bachelorette trip, and the girls would be with the bachelorette, and I would be with my mate, bachelor, you know. And so we were hanging out at the beach, and one of the friends from the bachelorette came over, and we're having a conversation, and she was talking, right, and she's like, "Hey, do you know Jesus?" And I was like, I grew up like going to church, but then I kind of just straight and did my own thing from high school onwards, and this was about 6 years back. And I was like, yeah, I know Jesus. And she's like, okay. And she's sharing, and she's like, but do you really know him? And I was like, mm. And bro, I'll tell you, I'd gone into so many different like systems, a lot of dark new age stuff that I was really into. I was into like just searching so many different belief systems. And it was crazy because it came at the time of where it was like, I got to a point where I felt exhausted of trying to find things and stuff. And I didn't feel grounded. And she's like, do you mind if I pray for you? So she prayed. She's like, yeah, I hope, you know, Christ comes to you in your heart and so on. And I remember feeling like, wow, like it felt different in my body just that day, right? And I went back to the bungalow at night because we were all staying in, and we had a couple, we're like sharing rooms with a few of us that are all spread out. And I was like, I came into the bungalow before the other two, and I quickly got down on my knees, like, you know, because I didn't want them to see it. I was like, I got down on my knees, and I'm like, you know, Jesus, if you are real, like I've learned that you are real, I want you to just share you with me. I want to experience you. I don't want anything else. I don't want a fake, false version of you. I don't even know if I want religion. I don't get it. Like, I just want you, and I want truth. And I don't care how I get it. I'll keep searching, but if you're the truth, then reveal yourself to me. And it was like literally within like days, man. I went back to California, and there was a guy that was doing these. And it sounds so crazy saying this, man, because I share it with people, and it's like, you got to be in the experience to know it, like to actually make sense of it. But it was like, this guy had come from New York, and he does this thing where it was like he had this Harry Potter type stick. One thing, it was weird, man. And he was talking all new agey and all this like stuff that he was into and everything. And he's like, he was a chiropractor, and he did these like things where he talks about string theory, and he does this quantum field stuff. I was like, oh, that's interesting. So I went, and anyway, there's like a massage table, and like each person would get on. One guy got on, and his body just, he laid on the table, and the guy was touching him out, and he's going, and he's saying these like chanting things. And this guy's body started contorting on the table, like involuntary. And I'm like, what? And he's like heaving and heaving like this. And I was like, this does not look comfortable. Like I started feeling funny. I was like, it's weird. Then my girl at the time got on the table, and then she did it. And she was like moving involuntary, not as much. And then she passed out, and she was out for like 5 minutes cold, and they picked her up and took her off the table. And then she woke up bawling her eyes out, crying. I was like, what the hell is going on here? And then they said, you're next. And so I get up, man, and I sit down on this massage table, and I'm like, dear Jesus, please protect me. You know, send angels to me, like all these things. I was like, God, like, please look over me. And I go to lay down on the table, and then a guy comes up to me and he goes, when you were younger, you used to do a Brazilian martial arts. And I did capoeira. And I went, where are you getting that from? And he goes, I just know things. And I go, To me, understanding what I know now, he's talking to dark spirits, right? Some people may say it's psychic, like to me, I know what it is. There's principalities and powers I've come to understand. It's like, it's that spiritual, dark spiritual talk. There is another paradigm, whether you like it or not. I rejected it for so long. I witnessed it in person. I was like, okay, there is. And so I'm laying on this table, man, and he's like trying to do his thing. And he's like, just relax. And I'm laying there, and I'm like, I'm laying, and he's doing this, bro. I'll tell you what, I work out at the gym. I like hardly sweat. Even when I do a real heavy, I'm just not a sweater, you know, I don't sweat that much. And there were sweat beads all over the table, like everywhere, like it covered. My shirt was drenched, and he couldn't do it. It wasn't working. And he's like, this is weird. Why isn't it working? I ended up getting up off the bench, and I ended up leaving. I was like, this is weird. I left the place. And I reached out to one of my friends who I hadn't spoken to in a long time, who's a Christian. He's like, right in it. I was like, dude, this is what happened. He's like, bro, that's the Holy Spirit. He's like, you were protected. That was the burning of the Holy Spirit. So nothing could come in. It was protecting you. You're God's child. And I was like, what? That was the turning point for me. And I started to like let go of the new agey practices, I was around people and okay with like the tarot card things, calling in spirits and stuff. And I was just like, I'm out, man. I'm out. Like I don't want anything to do with it. And that was my first experiential relevance, because I believe in order to form a strong belief, we have different aspects that we explore. Like, just because I said to you, or people that are listening to this here, like, oh, Joe, you saw dark spiritual activity, or you saw prayers answered, or miracles unfold before your eyes. They're like, that's great, but I didn't experience that. So it doesn't necessarily always come from that. You have logical consistency. So when I started studying theology and going deep into the scriptures, I was cross-referencing from different verses and chapters and different biblical, figures and apostles. And I would look at and like weigh it up, and I'd be challenged on it and tested, to test the faith. It says we must have an apologia. So Paul says, must have a reason to believe what you believe. So I love about the way of Christ is he's not saying just believe it. He's saying test this. That's how much I believe in it. Test. It's a guarantee of like, test it so much so because I believe this is the truth, And so that's a logical consistency. Then we have empirical evidence, which is you look back throughout history. What's prophecy telling us? Were there actual places in Israel, in Jerusalem, in Egypt? Like, were these places like around? Can we see evidence of this actually happening? Right. And then when you go to actually test a belief system from a very fundamental level of going, all right, I'm going to actually test my own belief system. And this could go for anyone here that's watching right now. There's parts that essentially create a belief system that's formed within you. And most people just adopt. They don't actually truly believe. They just adopt systems until they actually make a decision for themselves. I kind of adopted a Christian belief, but then I left it. And then I came back in relationship with Christ and chose it for myself with a mature mind and what I actually decided to believe in, right? But I tested these things. The first one is meaning. Okay. What's the meaning behind it, right? Like if we dig into it, like, what does it mean? If I believe this, and what does it mean? Where, next is origin. Where did it come from? Was it first formed? Did some random person, Wiggle Smith Jr. or whatever, come up with it in Kentucky, Ohio in the 70s? And now he thinks it's a belief. It's like, where does this thing come from? Test it, right? Next is morality. Is it moral? Because some belief systems aren't. It's like go and kill non-believers. Go and kill. It's like, that's not moral either. That's wrong. You got a wrong version of your system, or it's just not the right system at all for humanity. Then we have, so we have origin, meaning, morality, and the last one is destiny. It's the fourth one. Where are we going with this? Right? I personally don't want to come back as a ladybird or a butterfly. I'm good, man. Like a ladybug or a butterfly is not my jam. Like I like to think that there's something more to life than just this, and that I was created for a reason, that I don't have to keep paying for karmic cycles. That sounds like a torturous creator that wants us to keep living and having to pay for the bad decisions of people before me. Like it doesn't make sense to me. So I look at it like it's a 50-50, man. You either say you don't believe in a God and creator, or you do. And it's like, which one are you going to choose, man? If I choose the other, there's no chance. If I choose this and I choose it out of love and because I want that connection and I want to co-create with God, not that it's predestined, because I don't believe in that either. I think God would be an angry architect if he mapped our whole life out and we just don't follow it. It's like, how angry would you, frustrated would you be? Maybe you're frustrated, but it's not. He's co-creating with us second by second. We have free will. We get to choose. It's relationship. And every other religion I studied, and maybe some people get offended. Cool. Go challenge your system. Go look at it. I say this because I want you to make the best decision. Every other religion that I studied teaches us we must do the traditions and the rituals and work our way up the mountain to meet God, to win his love. And then what do we have? We have a view of a dictator, authoritarian, scared of this type of relationship with his God, and I must bow and submit and do everything, that I don't get to choose, that this is forced upon me, otherwise I burn in eternal hell. Or the narrative that Christ teaches, which is so different, that he represented, is God came down the mountain to meet with us, to be in communion and relationship with us, and to win our trust and our love, because he sacrificed himself for us. And when he said that I will not just spiritually resurrect, I will bodily resurrect, and he did it. And there's over 500 witnesses to that account, and that he ascended into the heavens of heavens. And he said that he can raise us from the dead too. That's your option, man. Otherwise, what is everything else? Where do we go with everything else, man? You know, when Christ dropped to his knees in the Garden of Gethsemane, his blood pressure was so high. He felt what it was like to be in a human experience. His blood pressure was so high, he was bleeding sweat drops of blood from his head. And he asked God, if there's any way I can pass from this bitter cup I'm about to drink, let it be. Is there any other way? And there wasn't. What does it tell you? There is no other way. He is the way. Otherwise, if there was another way you could go to heaven, then he didn't have to die on the cross. Remember this though, religion hung him on the cross. This world hung him on the cross. He had the answer, he has a remedy. And we still hung him on the cross. So I'm not religious, man. I reject the institution of religion and ritual. And it's pagan. It's paganism. It's not of God. It's not of God's original design. It uses imperial law, which is what the enemy of our soul uses to manipulate us. Christ overcame imperial law. He had the most beef with the religious. He said to the Sadducees and the Pharisees, he says, you are like whitewashed tombs. You know what that means, bro? It's like the biggest slap in the face. You look good on the outside, but you're dead on the inside. He triggered him like no tomorrow because he was so radical in truth that they couldn't handle it. We may be persecuted the same in time, ridiculed for that truth. But we live in a world right now where the truth is often surrounded by a bodyguard of lies. People want to keep changing things because we don't live in a we're in a pre-modernist world and postmodern. Now we're in a post-truth world. If you actually pull it apart and look at it from a philosophical point of view, what that means is if we want to just not consider truth now and just go, yeah, truth is just what it's not exclusive anymore. It could be, who knows? We'll keep it there to the side. But what we want now instead, and this is why we have so many problems in the world, is now we lead with, it's called preference. What that means is I believe that I'm this and this and that, and I could be this and that, and everybody. But then what happens, and it sounds good, and I get it. Like people are like, oh, that sounds great. Everyone could just be, but it actually creates more division and it creates more conflict because now everybody thinks that their preference is right. And it opens up a freaking can of worms, bro. You see what's happening in the Olympics with the stuff that's going on. It's like it's open a can of worms, you know? And I'm talking about the agenda and the culture. I'm not talking about individual people, man. I got love for individual people. But the cultures and the agendas where there's this open can of worms, bro, it's going to get messy. It already is. Preference over truth, man. That's a danger, massive danger. And we're heading there big time.
It's so interesting, dude. Just how you add it all together, fit it all together, connect the dots. Like for me, how I connected the dots, and I love what you said, the logical reference and looking at and really, yeah. For me, you know, in my family, I've been swimming in the new age from before I was born, like in the womb. Like my mom, you know, love her so much. She's amazing, but she did the best she could. And she was a hippie, naturopath, you know, my first stepdad was a yoga teacher, second stepdad, a psychotherapist. So I've been around like so much, you know, so-called healing and trauma and shadow work and personal growth for you know, so long. And then seeing I guess the fruit of what that created, it created my mom's been through multiple, I guess, psychosis episodes. She's totally healthy now. It's just, you know, her own experience. Seeing one of my stepdads become like a transvestite and became, you know, addicted to ice and alcohol, and seeing, you know, how the family has been so separated and their so-called personal development, like living free love and, you know, free spiritness of the new age. And I was looking at that. I was like, that's not a full truth. Like that's not really working, you know? And so I've always been questioning what's been going on. And I think the world is it rushes people. There's so much urgency for the next thing. No one sits back, takes a second to reflect. And so I love coming out to the farm here. It's like so much space to chill out and just be in the farm and really think. And I think so many people are rushing. It's like, let's just sit back for a second, disassociate a little bit and go, or just look at it for what it is and go, who's bearing the best fruit right now? and
Yeah.
follow that fruit, I guess you could say, as a metaphor. But
Yeah.
yeah.
Thanks for sharing that, man. I didn't know that. And I can see like, this is what I tell you, bro. When I was looking into so many different systems and I was going back and forth and, you know, I was applying some of it to my self-development practice. I think those things, there's, like I said, you can pick and choose. The thing about New Age is, you know, I've got stuff in my practices where I've gone like, that's really useful and it's awesome and it helps, right? But I do think the thing about New Age that I found in my discovery is it's like a salad bar of spirituality. It's like you just go and pick the best of the stuff that you like, and that, but like, and that's great, and a lot of it you can utilize. But ultimately, it's like that still doesn't have the grounding of a narrative that's unfolded that has consistency in it, that's actually taking you to a place, which I said the last one is destiny. It's like, where are you actually going with this? Like, is there a narrative that's unfolded that you're a part of? Because we are. That's why we call it, you know the name His Story. That's His story. It's God's story. It's unfolding. We're a part of this whole experience. This life is an interlude, right? And there's an option for us to go to Him, to return to our Creator. And so what I experienced when I was in so many different like systems was I experienced concepts of God, but I never really felt like, the deeper I went into each one, I felt like I had to keep going more, and it turned into more confusion and more spiral and then more inconsistencies. And I just felt lost, bro. It was when I met Christ, bro, and had that depth and actually really gave it that chance to be in relationship, to be in my own personal relationship. Everyone has their own personal relationship with Him in the scriptures, and to understanding, to learn Him and to understand the standard He set in the way. I actually know Him as a being, not a concept, but an actual living being that I experience. And bro, I talk with people often that have had, and they're like, bro, you see like the scales lift from their eyes. They're like seeing the world in a different way. So like, man, now I start to get the narrative of what's unfolding here and why this is happening, instead of living and trying to like always fix everything that goes into like a rabbit hole after rabbit hole, and no longer, still not having an outcome or solution to some degree of where we're going with this. I just couldn't live my life. It made me go crazy, bro. I tried it. It's not there. There's nothing there for it. And the thing is, you can't believe the truth and the lie at the same time. So that's why, like, for the longest time, I just keep opening my mind up. But honestly, the more that I have people that, like, I studied Christian apologetics as well. And so I, you know, like to be able to debate, and I talk a lot with people of different belief systems. We have debates, and but like constructive, we open up, you know, Muslims, other Christians I spend a lot of time debating with, because I get so in their doctrine and legalism, it gets frustrating sometimes, but I still do it. You know, we all have our different levels of ways to communicate in different spaces. And like those that are into Hindu and Buddhist, like I'm in here in Bali and I respect their beliefs. And I look at it all and I just like, isn't it cool that we get to like sit down and share that we're on a journey in life, and we're, you know, and none of us can say we know 110% like right on the dot. But what I know so far in my experience, bro, is just the truest that I've ever experienced, this connection with God. And so much of it makes sense as to what's happening in the world and what prophetic things have come into play and how empires have come and gone, and the sense of creation. And I think a lot of those that don't believe in God will try and push a different narrative to counteract it, to try and, you know, put doubt in their minds. The same thing that happened with Lucifer with Eve. He said, did God say you couldn't touch this fruit? You're like, He doesn't want you to touch it because He doesn't want you to become like Him. It's like making people think that they can become like gods. And that's what I noticed so much in the New Age space. Everyone was trying to be a god and a goddess. Some may take offense to that, but I'm like, I'm just being real. It's like, if I think I can pull myself up by my shoestrings and save my own soul, I've got it all wrong, because I can't. You can't. No one can. We need Him. He is the way, the truth, and the life. You know, so lies believed breaks the circle of love and trust. So if I start thinking that God's a dictator and He's angry and He's going to send us all to hell, then if I believe that lie and it puts doubt in my mind, I break the connection of that circle of love and trust with God, and I'm not in that strong relationship with Him. And I really dislike religion for that fact. Even Christianity, man, I dislike it because it's created a wedge, and it's unfair that a lot of people haven't been able to fully experience Christ. You know, He reveals Himself to us all the time, but it's just like, man, if I could just like take it out, religion out of the mix, and be like, come and just like just jam with Jesus, like it's such a different experience, bro.
The connotations, like what that word means, you know, even Jesus is like the English word, right? There's a traditional word, and
Yeshua.
Yeshua, Joshua, you know, and
Doesn't matter, man.
it doesn't even matter. But there's just so many angles. It's just all upside down, right? And there's so many angles that there's just confusion and like prejudices and judgments up, and it stops people from diving in. Just the word, the Bible, right? Everyone's like, like, and so where would be, you know, I remember messaging you recently, like maybe a year ago. I was like, bro, what do you share with new Christians? What do you share with new believers? Like, there's a great documentary I think you shared with me, a case for God, and that's on A Case for Christ. That's on YouTube at the moment, free. It's an amazing movie. But what else do you kind of share with people who are wanting to, who might be open now and wanting to have a look?
Yeah, it's a good question. Like, okay, so the Case for Christ is good for those that feel like maybe they've just counted God out. They could have had a bad experience with religion, and I get it. I hear so many stories. I get why people walk away from religion. I totally get it. So it's a great movie to paint a picture of a guy. It's a true story. He was a hardcore atheist, and his partner came to Christ, and he was like, he couldn't understand it. So he went out. He's like an investigative journalist, and he ended up doing his thing. And he saw so much evidence to it, and he ended up becoming a believer, right? So that was awesome. There's a good movie for people to watch. You can watch it pretty much anywhere. I think it's on so many different channels. The other thing I'd say is The Chosen. The Chosen is such a great TV series. It's the first, I think the only other movie or TV series, it was a movie on Rotten Tomatoes, so RottenTomatoes.com, that has had like 100% Rotten Tomato rating and like 99% audience was like Toy Story. So The Chosen has that too. The Chosen is 100% Rotten Tomato rating, and out of like so many people that rate it, and 99% audience rating, which is nuts. Like, think of some of your favorite movies ever, like Titanic. They're still not even up there. Now, I don't want to like say it in a way where you're like, you got massive expectations, because the first episode, you kind of get to know the characters and it slowly comes into form. But I really do believe that they've done such a great job at not making about religion, but really you getting to know the character of Jesus. And I believe God's true character is represented through Christ. If you really want to know who God is, and not this atheist version and this religion hardcore version, like, watch The Chosen, because you understand how God really interacts with us. And it's through the representation of the way Jesus shows up. And it's good because it's like, it's not straight up word for word scripture biblical, but it's like the fill-in things that were happening in between the things that you might have read in the Bible. So a lot of it's new, but it's like it's still, they've done such a great job at keeping intact Christ's character, and I love it. And there are biblical parts to it too, but so many of my non-believer friends that watch it are like, man, this is great, you know, because I don't know if you noticed this, man. I was on Netflix. So much of this stuff is dark, bro. It's such a dark influence. There's so much of an agenda that's pushed in Netflix. Man, I'd be like, if I had kids, I'd hide my kids, bro. I'd put a lock on that thing, because it's getting dark as hell. It's
every movie, 95% of the movies on there, the titles of that is just death and zombies and killing and
all
it's
sorts
hectic.
of stuff.
Yeah.
We sound old saying this, but it's true, man. It's like you get to a point where you want to safeguard your peace, and you want to make sure that you're staying in a better harmony in your life. It's like the Chosen is like that. Like, you watch it, you feel positive. It's like, cool, I'm learning things about like where my place is in the world, and who, you know, what could be possible for me. And this is how it is to live in a high standard. You know, it's entertaining. It's not like dark. Like, you can only take so much of it, bro. Our souls aren't meant for that, man.
Totally. And I'd like to just ask a couple more questions. I know we got to wrap it up, but you have obviously a successful business. You have this beautiful relationship with Christ. So how do you meld the two? And maybe we can finish off on, you know, this new series, The Unknown God, and just to share a little bit more about that and what people can look forward to.
Yeah, thanks, man. So how I bring it in with business, it's interesting because I've gone through stages. You know, I needed to build my certainty in life. I was definitely building my business at the start with more of a wounded approach. You know, it was about motivation. It was about like making, you know, get the money up, get the status, like chasing the numbers. My heart was still in it, in the sense of putting out great self-development content through Addicted to Success. It was just that like I was so focused on the material. And it was only until I started to do my healing around my mom and my dad, because I've noticed that it was affecting my relationships, I had an anxious attachment style tendencies in response to how I related in relationships. And I would attract dismissive, avoidant women, you know. And for me, I was like in heartbreak. I felt like I resented myself. I felt like I was always overextending, betraying myself, and not having the type of love and relationships I wanted. And I noticed myself like leading with what I did and what I have in my business, and not based off just who I am. So I've come to a more of a maturing over the years to really start centering myself more, man. I was in force. And so many entrepreneurs, I coach so many of them where they're in desperation and force. They're not in inspiration and creation and power, you know? So the more that I live in the standards that Christ set, like, he says, we are the salt and the light of the earth, you know? And, if you look at like in the biblical times, they'd have like the compost, right? And you put salt in amongst the compost, it would actually make it separate, so it would keep it clean and keep the bacteria from coming in. And it's essentially what it is. Like we don't necessarily have to be out just doing all the ministry and all of the things. Like it's like just by who we be has an impact in the world. By us being the salt and the light, it doesn't mean we're righteous and better than. It's just because we're centered in the rhythm of what God has created us to be in that original design. And through reconciling with Him, we come back into the rhythm of original design. It's like, listen, I used to listen to like grimy, like hip hop, like super egotistical, prideful, like smack your chick up and like, you know, all this dirty stuff and drugs and bang, bang, gang bang stuff. And bro, it's such a dark rhythm to it. Like that it has an evil influence. And so I feel like when you start to actually notice the influences that you're coming from, after a while, when you've come out of that, you start to realize how different it is. It contrasts it. And for me, I even felt like that in my business. I was like, man, I was leading so much from force to try and create all these things, to have things in my business. But now it's actually about moment to moment. I brought it closer to home. I can take a bird's eye view and look at it holistically and go like, how do I desire to feel in my business? And to slow down, like you're saying, like having that slow down, like being like you're in the wilderness, right? Like you're in Tasmania, but being present with the process rather than always measuring the material and the numbers and that. And it's worked wonders, bro, because why do we make money? We make money to buy the things that make us feel a certain way, but it's temporary and it's fleeting. Why can't I just feel those things now? Like if I've got my stuff together in structure and I've got it in alignment and I feel spiritually connected, I'm in co-creation with God, I am in service of others and I'm doing what I love, I can have those feelings now. Because so much of what people chase is like a drug, man. I know why people go and do drugs. The homeless on the street that do drugs, man, my heart goes out to them because when they were children, like I said at the start, trauma, they didn't know how to emotionally regulate themselves because mom and dad weren't there, or mom or dad, and they weren't allowed to be authentically who they were. They felt like they weren't good enough. When you feel authentically like you can be who you want to be and you know how to emotionally regulate and you don't need uppers and downers, then you don't need drugs because you already got the feeling. Unfortunately, those that are out on the streets, homeless that are taking drugs, and people that go just like, I've done it, man. It's like have one night stands, but feel empty after and shameful. It's because you were going for the hit, but you know it was inauthentic to how you really wanted to show up. And so I really audited myself, man. And I started looking at my vision. I started looking at where I wanted to play. I started like, I'm in relationship with Christ. So it's the same as like, you know, I've got a girlfriend. So if I'm in a relationship with her, and we decide, you know, to go to the next level with commitment, get married, and then it's like we want to buy a house, I go have that conversation with her. It's a big decision. Hey, babe, what do you think? Should we buy a house? What do you think of this house? If I go buy a car, I'm not just going to rock up with a car and just be like, oh yeah, I just bought a car. It's my decision. You have the conversation out because you're in that relationship and sharing. And I do the same with Christ. Is when it comes to my business, when it comes to my health, when it comes to who I choose to hang around, I have that conversation. I pray to God, like if this person's meant to be in my life, you know, let it be the case. Like, if not, then like send to me the urges and inspirations to know when to move on. You know, like if I'm meant to build this business up and spend this next, because our time's so important, we never get it back again. If I'm meant to spend the next 6 months working on this project, inspire me to the nth degree to be committed and focused and know the depth of this. If I'm not, then show me, reveal to me another path. It's powerful, dude. Like you're co-creating in real time, you know, it makes all the difference, man. Just who he is makes all the difference, you know? And so Business for me used to be numbers and constantly chasing the rainbow. And now I feel centered, bro. I feel at peace, man. There's a lot of crazy stuff going on in the world, but I know where my solace is, man. I know, like, with Christ, he says, come and find your rest in me. Like, I don't need to run around trying to find concepts of God anymore. Like, I found it, found him. And guess what? I stay still and I grow in an upwards direction with him. It's nothing but growth, man. Comes with challenges sometimes, but for the most part, it's growth, bro.
For people maybe, wanting to try this out, it's obviously we call it praying, the new age would say, setting an intention, but like, is there a structure to praying that you found, from my understanding, just the word Jesus, like when people have had meetings with the darkness, they say the word Jesus and it leaves the room. Jesus has weight. And so do you feel that is important?
Well, he has authority, man. When it comes to, like, this isn't a battle of flesh and blood as much as we see in the physical. This is principalities and powers that are at play. I can't deny that, man. I've seen it. The amount of people I've spoken to that have witnessed and experienced these things. I've had people that have been spiritually tortured, people that have tried to do like astral projections, and they've experienced these things, man, in their life, and they've called upon Jesus and it's gone, and they've gone back to that peace. I know people that have left really dark tantric stuff they were involved in that felt like suicidal, and they came out of it and they're like come good again through Christ. It's like, I believe that channel is a counterfeit version. I know what they want. They want love. They want light. Come to the truth. It's here. Like, this is where it's at. The other one's the counterfeit version. It's like, I'm being sensitive to, like, maybe a bit insensitive, but I'm not meaning to be like that. It's like, I can say it because I experienced it. It's like a polished turd. Like, to experience something where it's like, you can make it look good and you can present it as a package of it's this, and on the outside, like a little bit of on the surface was feel good and you get these good things. But as you go deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper, it goes into more confusion and more lost and more further away from truth, because it's surrounded by concepts now. Now it's like you've got yourself in a muddle, So for me, man, like, prayer is one of the most powerful things. I had prayer in my life, man. My grandma, my mom, I've prayed for people that I've witnessed healings. You've got to also give some up to God, because we don't know what that person's journey is and when it's their time to go. But I've witnessed it, bro. And prayer is so important. I used to do transcendental meditation and I left all that, and I feel way more fulfilled, man, being in prayer, because I'm in appreciation, I'm in gratitude, I'm in relationship, and I'm in reflection. I'm in those four things, man: appreciation, gratitude, relationship, and reflection. And I'm planning my next thing I'm co-creating with God, and it keeps me centered, man. It reminds me of what's important. I'm less triggered. I'm less in fear. I'm more healthy. I'm more productive. I'm looking forward to life. I'm looking forward to, if I was to die, I'm not, maybe slightly easier to say it, but it's like, I know that there's a promise at the end of it. It's been promised, and he's been able to fulfill all promises. We just see it. Like, read the scriptures, give it a shot. Take religion out of it and just look at it and go, I just want to follow this guru, this awesome rabbi dude called Jesus. Let's just see if I got some cool stuff I can learn from him, and just take church or religion out of it. That's what we did with the unknown God, man. That's why, I like to inspire people to want to check it out, because we call it's a podcast for those that don't like church. That's the subtitle for our, the Unknown God podcast. And we bring all of it into the mix. We talk about existentialism. We talk about alien invasions that they keep talking about. We talk about end times. We talk about Satan's influence in Hollywood and music. We talk about conspiracy theories. We talk about transhumanism. We talk about how to transcend the matrix of the fallen kingdom. We talk about, like, why Jesus is the only way. Some of these things may trigger you, but just give it a shot. Man, if someone tries to come and challenge me, I love that, because all it's going to do is I'm either going to start actually seeing more of the truth in something else, or my faith will be tested. And if I need someone to believe what I'm believing, it means I didn't truly believe what I believed, because I need to convince. I don't. As a matter of fact, when I've been debated about this, all that's happened is I've become even stronger in my faith. And it starts to show you more of, like, okay, I'm on a path that holds a lot of validity to it. I want everyone to experience it, bro. So fulfilling. bigger than business, bigger than self-development, bigger than all of that.
Well, I can sense it from you, bro, and I can see it. You know, your actions and what you're creating, you know, is a result of that alignment. You know, for me, I guess when you're looking at personal development, and you've come, so much of my experience is with personal development as well, and that kind of kickstarted my journey. But I guess personal development teaches you, in my eyes, to get into the driver's seat of your own life, and you be the captain, you be the like the warrior or the warrioress, like going out there. Yet what I've learned through following Christ, it's like, get out of the car, get out of the driver's seat or passenger seat, get in the boot, lock the boot, and let Jesus take over. And that's and trust and let go and have that faith. And the more that I'm getting in the back seat, in the boot, and locking it, not in a way of like, you know, being kidnapped, but like willingly saying, you know, walk through me, talk through me, like be for me to be a vessel for you, Jesus, like come through. I swear, people that were toxic in my life have disappeared. Relationships that were unfulfilling have disappeared. Success in business and, you know, alignment to the right community. My relationship with myself and like the anxiety and the, you know, the constant obsession for that next thing, it's all just disappeared. It's just like there's a being, there's an embodiment of just that presence. And so yeah, that's the metaphor to it, man. And that's how I kind of see it. I love if you could text everyone's smartphone right now in the whole world and give them one message, one text, what would that one text be?
Jesus loves you. Jesus loves you. Yeah. We have a Gojek service here, which is like Uber Eats. And I have Indonesians that come here all the time to drop the food off. And every time I get it, I give them a tip and I say, Jesus loves you. And it's so like, I've had some really interesting, they're like, oh, and sometimes they go, okay. And sometimes they're like, oh, like you can just see like, they're like, oh my God, you know? And sometimes they're like, oh, I'm a Christian, I believe that too. Very rarely they'll say that, but like, just to like, I always thought to myself, man, if someone would just walk away one day and just be like, man, that was my first encounter with someone like that, and they told me that, like, maybe that's the thing that they needed to hear, because they've heard all these other things and they lost hope. Like, that to me is the most powerful, is Jesus loves you. I truly believe it. When I read the scriptures, when I relate with him and see his promise for us and what he did, he died for us. You don't have to accept him if you don't want to. I think it's a great idea, but ultimately to know that you're loved, it's like King Jesus, right? Like the King of the kingdoms of heaven that's been brought in and prepared for us. Imagine if he was an angry dictator, which is what pretty much this world has brought to us ever since history started. Was we've always just had leaders that for the most part are very greedy and in it for themselves. And we've had some terrible leaders that have created holocausts and massacres. Like, we'd be screwed. What if he was that? He's not. It happens to be that he is all loving and unconditional with his love and truth. He stands for three things: truth, love, and liberty. That's what we're trying to achieve as humans. I believe that. We're just never going to be able to do it without him. And maybe that's our experience we have on earth, to finally be there, to know we tried everything ourselves as humans, it didn't work. Now we trust him because he can follow through.
Joel, I had no idea. Well, I had a little bit of an idea, but I didn't know it was going to go this deep. So I appreciate you sharing from your heart, brother. And everyone,
it's spirit-led. It's flow because it's spirit-led. It's not. It's we're in it, man.
Yeah. Whew. Yeah, it's been a great interview, man. Thank you so much for your time. Check out Joel on social media, addictedtosuccess.com, influentialcoach.com, the Unknown God podcast. And reach out to him. He's training coaches at the moment. So if you guys are feeling called or resonating, get in touch.
Let's do it.
Thank you, brother. Thanks for your time. Talk to you soon.
Be blessed, man. Thank you.